The wind howled across the high plains of Colorado like a lonesome coyote, kicking up dust devils that danced over the cracked earth. Elena Ramirez clung to the edge of the ravine, her fingers bleeding where the sharp rocks had torn her skin. Below her, the drop was a black maw, 30 feet to jagged boulders and a trickle of what had once been a river. Her horse lay dead at the bottom, neck broken in the fall. She had been riding for 3 days straight, chasing a rumor of work at the Double Bar Ranch, her last dollar spent on the saddle now shattered far beneath her. Por favor, te lo suplico, she cried, her voice raw, barely carrying over the gale. The words were meant for God, for anyone, for the indifferent ska. She was 22, alone, and the world had already taken everything, her parents to fever back in Santa Fe, her brother to the war, her home to the bank. All that remained was the will to keep breathing, and even that was slipping with every desperate scrabble of her boots against the cliff face. Off beats. Distant at first, then closer, deliberate. A shadow fell across the rim above her. She looked up through sweat-streaked hair and saw a man on a big gelding, hat brim low, face weathered like old saddle leather. Jack Harlan, owner of the Double Bar, though she didn't know his name yet. He had been tracking a stray steer when the wind carried her plea to him. Jack swung down without a word, boots thudding into the dirt. He was 45, widowed 5 years, childless, and known in town as a man who kept to himself. Folks said he had a heart hardened by loss, his wife to childbirth, the baby with her. He tied his lariat to the saddle horn, looped the other end under his arms, and lowered himself over the edge. Elena's strength failed. Her left hand lost its grip. She dangled by one arm, sobbing, legs kicking at nothing. Hold on, girl, Jack grunted, voice steady as the rope. He reached her in 3 powerful pulls, wrapped an arm around her waist, and hauled her up like she weighed no more than a feed sack. When they rolled onto solid ground, he lay there a moment, chest heaving, staring at the sky. Then he looked at her. And was stunned. She was the spitting image of his wife, Maria, at that age, same dark eyes, same defiant tilt to the chin even in exhaustion. But it wasn't just the face. In her pocket, half torn and fluttering in the wind, was a photograph. Jack's breath caught. It was Maria, Janger, smiling beside a boy in Union blue. Elena's brother. Jack had taken that picture himself the day the regiment left Santa Fe, back when he was 20 and thought war was glory. Elena sat up, coughing dust. Gracias, señor. I thought I was done. Jack couldn't speak. He helped her to her feet, led her to his horse, and boosted her up behind the saddle. The ride back to the ranch was silent except for the wind and the creak of leather. The Double Bar sprawled across 1,000 acres of shortgrass and cottonwood creek bottoms. The hens were branding calves in the corral when Jack rode in with the half-dead girdle clinging to his back. Cookie, the cook, took one look and started barking orders, hot water, bandages, stew. The men stared, curious but respectful. Jack's word was law here. Elena ate like she hadn't seen food in a week, which was close to true. When she finished, Jack showed her to the bunkhouse loft, a small room once used for storage. You'll stay here till you're steady, he said. No arguments. She wanted to protest, she had pride, had always earned her keep, but her body betrayed her, sinking into the narrow cot like it was heaven. That night Jack sat on the porch long after the hands turned in, rolling a cigarette he didn't light. The photograph lay on the table beside him. He had carried a copy in his own saddlebag all these years, creased and faded. Maria had never known he kept it. He had never forgiven himself for not riding east to find her brother, for letting duty to the ranch keep him home when the war took the young men away. Days turned to weeks. Elena healed. She insisted on working, mucking stalls, repairing fences, anything to pay her debt. Jack tried to stop her, but she had her mother's stubbornness. The hands called her Señorita Tormenta behind her back. She worked twice as hard as any man and never complained. One afternoon, a norther blew in, the kind that froze cattle where they stood if you didn't get them to shelter. Jack and the crew rode out at dawn to drive the herd down from the north pasture. Elena saddled a rangy mare named Daisy and went with them, no one daring to tell her no. The storm hit like judgment. A snow slashed sideways, visibility down to 10 feet. A yearling broke from the bunch, panicked, heading for a coulee. Elena spurred after it without thinking. Jack saw her disappear into the white and felt his heart stop. He found her 20 minutes later, the calf roped and dragging behind Daisy, Elena half frozen but grinning through chattering teeth. Couldn't they let him die, jefe? That night, by the cook stove, Jack poured her coffee with shaking hands. You got no sense, girl. Maybe, she said. But neither did the man who pulled me out of that ravine. I looked at her then, really looked, and saw past the resemblance to Maria. I saw Elena, fierce, kind, unbroken by a world that had tried its best. Spring came early that year. The creek ran high with snowmelt, greening the pastures. One Sunday, Jack hitched the buckboard and drove Elena to town. She thought it was for supplies. Instead, he stopped at the lavier's office. Inside, on the desk, lay papers. Jack pushed them toward her. Your brother's land grant, 2 sections south of the creek. Army finally settled the claim. It's yours if you want it. Elena stared, speechless. The land bordered the double bar. Her family's name was on the deed, lost for years in bureaucracy. I can't, she started. You can, Jack said. And you will. But there is a condition. She raised an eyebrow. Partner with me. Merge the parcels. We run them together. You keep your brand, I keep mine. Equal say. They are squilled, but she blinked them back. Why? I took a deep breath. Because your brother was my friend. Because your mother saved my life once, long ago, when I was green and stupid and got snakebit on the trail to Santa Fe. She sucked the venom out and carried me 10 miles to a doctor. He never got to repay her. Let me repay you. Elena's hand trembled as she signed. When she looked up, Jack was holding something else, a small velvet box. Inside was a silver locket, engraved with a tiny Mustang. Maria wore this, he said quietly. They want you to have it. That summer, the double bar became the double bar Ramirez. Elena designed a new brand, a bar crossed by a rising sun. The hands grumbled about change until the first calf crop hit the market, healthy, fat, top dollar. Grumbling turned to pride. Years passed. The ranch grew. Elena married a quiet wrangler named Tomas who could gentle any horse with a whisper. They built a house on the hill overlooking the creek, close enough to Jack's that smoke from both chimneys mingled on cold mornings. Children came, 3, then 4, dark-eyed like their mother, stubborn like their grandfather Jack. One autumn evening, when the cottonwoods blazed gold, Jack sat on the porch with Elena's oldest, a boy of 7 named Mateo. The child traced the locket around his grandmother's neck, now passed to his mother. Tell me again, abuelo, Mateo said. About the ravine. Jack smiled, the lines around his eyes soft. Your mama was hanging on by a thread, literally. Wind screaming, rocks cutting her hands to ribbons. She looked up and begged, por favor, te lo suplico. And I swear the sky itself leaned down to listen. Mateo's eyes were wide. And you saved her. I pulled her up, Jack corrected. But she saved me right back. So with me a heart could break and still have room to grow bigger. Below them, the herd grazed peaceful under a painted sky. Elena stepped onto her own porch, Tomas' arm around her waist, and raised a hand in greeting. Jack lifted his head in return. Kindness, he had learned, was not a single act but a chain, forged link by link across years, across losses, across the vast and lonely miles. It began with a rope tossed over a cliff, with a stranger's plea carried on the wind. It ended here, in laughter echoing over pastures that once knew only silence. And somewhere, in the whisper of the cottonwoods, Maria smiled.